Welcome to the Yeg Show. My name is Tia Diamo. I'm really excited because we have a great man indeed on the Yeg Show tonight. And I'll just tell you a little bit about him. He was born in Edmonton, raised just west in the city of Spruce Grove. He has lived in West Edmonton since 2002. He received his Bachelor of Commerce from the University of Alberta in 2006, and he managed a retail business at the West Edmonton Mall before he was elected in 2013. He's a strong advocate of a community league system, and he has served both on the Medelac and Jasper Park community leagues. During his time on Edmonton City Council, he served as a council representative on the Accessibility Advisory Committee, the City of Edmonton Youth Council, the Edmonton Transit System. Is responsible for four council initiatives: next gen seniors, public engagement, and the transportation innovation. He also sits on the Edmonton Public Library Board of Trustees and the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association Board of Directors. He's Andrew Knack and is no stranger to any of us tonight, and he joins us on the Yeg Show to take questions.
Hello.
Oh, I was thinking, what would I do?
There we are. We're back.
Yay, we're back. Hello, thanks for coming on to the Yeg Show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
In that rather lengthy introduction, did I miss out anything? You've pretty much done everything. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
I hope not.
Okay, so the first question is, so you're running for Ward Nakota Iska, which was formerly Ward 1, and what comes to mind is, why in the world are you doing it again?
Well, I often say I'm so very fortunate to be able to have the opportunity to serve people, and this is when I first got elected almost 8 years ago. I had a feeling I would love what I get to do, but I never could have imagined just how much I love what I get to do each and every day. And I know it sounds cliche, but I mean, that ability to serve people in this way, there's really just no better feeling. And so why I want to keep doing it is we are going to go through quite a bit of turnover on council with at least 5 new members of council. And I think when you're going through that type of change, like we did when I first came onto council in 2013, I found it extremely valuable to have those experienced voices there, people who, even though we didn't always agree on everything, were there to help us succeed, and were there to help teach us how the system worked, how to bring about the changes that we campaigned on. And I think there's a lot of value I can bring in that sense. I feel very fortunate that over the years I've worked to try to build consensus amongst people from across the political spectrum, always interested in engaging people as much as possible. And I think there is still some really important work to do, both for the ward specifically, but also as a city. We're coming out of, and we're not yet out of it, but we're coming out of a very challenging time, not just the pandemic, but we're dealing with massive financial challenges. And it's going to involve, in order to come out of this even stronger, we're going to need to have new ways of thinking, new ideas. And the best way to do that is by reaching out, building consensus, listening and learning from others, and hopefully bringing about that change. So I'd love the opportunity to continue serving, because I think there's a lot that I can hopefully continue to bring when we're going through such a challenging time.
I hear you. So in 8 years, what would you describe as your greatest accomplishment being councillor?
It is such a tough question. I mean, when you think about that, how do you try to pick just one thing? And so I feel like I'm going to slightly bend the rule. I feel if I'm looking at that, there's one big project that I was very focused on when I ran for council, because it's something that would come up from many of the people that I was connecting with at the doors, and that's the Valley Line West LRT, and actually having that project finally under construction, coming out to serve this part of the city. This project is decades overdue to serve our part of the city, and so it's finally on its way. And that's one of the things I'm most excited about, and most I guess proud of, because it is something I tried to work very hard on to make sure we could secure all the right funding and move forward with that. But more generally, I think the thing that I'm really most proud of is hopefully, again, the ability to engage as many people as possible, to try to bring together different voices, recognizing, again, we're not always going to agree, but the more we work to engage one another, the more we work to learn from one another, the better and more informed decisions we can make. And I think that's something that I feel like I've done well. Ultimately, everyone else will be the judge of that, but it's so important in municipal governance to be willing to hear out as many different voices as possible, and then use that to help make the decisions for what is best for the entire city. And I hope that once all is said and done, people will look back and say that hopefully, when one small way was able to help raise the bar of discourse, in order, it was there to help raise the bar for respectful dialogue and engagement of one another.
So, in 8 years, you must have encountered people who didn't want to form a consensus with you, people who didn't want to hear you, people who didn't want to listen to what you're saying. Most especially now, I'm thinking, what has been the lowest point of your tenure so far? And when you encounter those people who don't want to hear what you're saying, how do you deal with it?
I'm also somewhat stubborn, so I don't want to give up on those who are just passionately angry with me. And I don't. The beauty of municipal politics is there's very few people who are just so passionate that they absolutely just hate you or detest you. At most, it's usually they just passionately disagree with you. But I think the important thing is, again, you don't give up. You don't stop listening to somebody who disagrees with you. As long as they don't get to the point where they're, actually being disrespectful or derogatory or violent or anything like that, which fortunately I haven't really had to deal with. I think you just keep reaching out and you keep extending a hand to say, let's talk, because again, most of the issues that we deal with at a local level are not partisan. There isn't necessarily a right-wing way to deal with an issue and a left-wing way to deal with an issue. Think about something like snow removal. There's no conservative or liberal or NDP way to deal with snow removal. Snow removal is just a service, and there might be different options of how to tackle that, but it's not partisan in nature. So chances are that even if somebody disagrees with me the majority of the time, there's still likely a number of issues that we agree with each other on. I mean, if you actually look at what council does every day, the vast majority of things we agree on unanimously. I would say good 75 to 80% of the decisions that we make are done in a unanimous way. So when you remind yourself of that, it makes it that much easier to try to reach out to somebody who maybe isn't interested in having a discussion at first, but hopefully will open up if you give them a chance to really be heard, not to always agree at the end of the conversation, but to have ideally a mutual respect for where each person is coming from at the end of the conversation.
Usually when I put out flyers, I'm doing an interview, I rarely hear anybody say anything, but with you, the energy that's come back from our flyer has been positive. So I get you radiate positive energy. I've had people say, "Oh, Andrew did ABC. I got CDE." Is so I'm just kind of curious as to what is Andrew Knack saying to Andrew Knack about leadership, about Andrew Knack, about your time in government and the future. And when Andrew Knack thinks about his legacy, what is Andrew telling Andrew about his legacy?
Hopefully very little. I think the moment you start to worry about how people are going to remember you, I think that's when you start maybe not being as responsive as you should be. I'm not naive in this, that our voter turnout for municipal elections is unfortunately much lower than I'd like to see. It's oftentimes just a third of people, um, and because of that, it's very, I would say, common for people to have no idea who I am, and that is actually, I think, quite a good thing. It serves as a very humbling thing to remember, that very few people know who you are. You know, you can go into a store, you can knock on somebody's door, and then not know who you are. And so,
Andrew, you've got 11,000 people following you on Twitter. No, they know who you are. Let's not go down that road just yet. They know you.
some people know, you're right, some people do, and those who are really engaged. But you know, I door knock typically once a month, throughout the entire term. I don't just door knock during an election. And there's many times when I knock on a door where somebody answers and they obviously have no idea who I am. And so I think it is important for us not to get caught up in, you know, legacy or how you want to be remembered. You know, in the end, I came into this to serve others. And my hope is that when all is said and done, either when I choose to stop running or when the people don't vote you in anymore, I hope that at the end that they'll feel that I made things better, that I helped make things better in the ward that I represented, that I helped make things better in the city, that ideally we made things more positive and constructive. But overall, I don't want to dwell on that, because in the end, you shouldn't go into public service for the sake of trying to be remembered. You should go into public service for the sake of wanting to serve others.
And this is why I love Andrew Knack. That wisdom is clearly beyond me. And for you to be able to articulate that is really good. What touches me, especially when I talk to politicians, is there's a story. I want you to tell me a story. 8 years you've been counselor, one person whose life you changed with your philosophy, with your ideology, with the work you do. I want you to tell me that story, because that is the story I'm going to remember. Already I'm getting positive vibes, you know. That story is the one story our listeners will remember tonight.
Well, I think, again, it's hard for me to try to say who, you know, that positive story for someone else. It's in my mind much easier for other people to share their experiences and their stories, and so I find it hard to try to say this is what I did to change somebody's life. You know, I hope I've had that kind of positive impact in people's lives, but in a way, it almost feels a little arrogant to be like, oh, I've certainly changed lives. I've certainly had that. I think, again, for me, my hope is that through what I do every day, through my work ethic, through my desire to connect with as many people as possible, to reach out and really learn from as many people as possible, that at some point somebody's looked at that and felt like that they can also go and make that difference. But it's hard for me to point to a story, because I think each person has their own story, and each person has their own experience. So I can just say that my approach, again, is continuing to serve in that way, to continuing to try to hold myself to a standard that I would expect of anyone else serving in the same role. And then at the end, hopefully people look at that and say, this is somebody that I want to, you know, whether it's somebody who wants to run in the future, or whether it's somebody that wants to help out in their community in whatever way possible, that they might have found some inspiration. That to me is encouraging. But I wish I had a story, but I almost, in a way, glad I don't, because
That's a very beautiful answer as well, Andrew. You didn't fall into that trap. Well done. That's, you're an experienced and a seasoned. I was trying to trip you as well. I'm just wondering. I speak to people, and what I hear is homelessness. What I see is homelessness is a big area. Does homelessness affect your constituency? And in 8 years, what are the changes your work has brought to that very desperate problem of homelessness in Edmonton?
so homelessness is an issue in every single part of the city. People might not think that it impacts their part of the city, but there's absolutely, you have neighbors currently living in your community in the park space nearby in a spot that's not in a home. You just might not always see it. Sometimes it can be a little hidden. The challenge, and to your question, is what have we been able to do? And while, so I hate starting with this, but I always do think it's important to remind people that housing has actually never been a municipal responsibility. It's primarily been provincial.
Yeah.
Yet that said, we can't just sit back idly and say, well, it's their problem, let them deal with it. So even before my time on council, there had been a lot of work started around the tenure plan to end homelessness. And to the credit of many different groups and organizations who help support our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness, we have, as a city, been able to house many people over the last 10 years. The challenge is that some of our neighbors who have the greatest need, some of those who need maybe 24/7 supports because they're dealing with a variety of very specific challenges. We really haven't been able to make progress in that front. So actually last year, the City of Edmonton City Council approved funding to build about 200 units of permanent supportive housing, and we need about 916 across the entire city to house every single person who has the greatest needs right now. And we did it because, again, we couldn't keep waiting. It's been frankly very frustrating watching year after year, and provincial government after provincial government, and frankly federal government after federal government not put in the money that they should be to help ensure that nobody has to live without a home. And I mean, there's sort of the two ways of looking at it is that, of course, and the most important one is that everyone deserves a home, and we should want to make sure everyone has access to a home. But and I hate saying this, but let's set that aside for a moment. Let's set aside our hearts for a moment and say, what if we just looked at it from a financial lens? From just a financial lens, it makes sense to provide a home to every single person. We actually save money every year when people who have been without homes now have homes with that 24/7 support around them. So whether you are looking at it from a financial perspective or that human perspective, there is a need for every single person to have a home. And so the city's done waiting. We're doing what we can. The federal government, to their credit, over the last couple of years is starting to invest more, but we're still not nearly where we need to be. And now we're waiting just on the final order of government. And this doesn't have to like ending homelessness. To a lot of people sounds like, oh, this could take 15, 20 years, 50 years, even if you did what you needed to do. We could end homelessness within 5 years. And all we need to do is do a little bit of upfront investment to build the homes that everyone needs. And then, yes, that upfront cost will actually save money within a few years. And more importantly, nobody's going to be living in our parks, on our streets, in spots that really should be unacceptable to every one of us. And so I hope we can finally get there, but I think it's going to take the city continuing to do more and more and take on the responsibility that's the provincial government's. And I'd love to see, if they don't want to do the work, maybe it's time they let the city and turn over the entire jurisdiction to the city, because we'll do it. If they give us their budget, if we have the staffing resources, we can get it done. We can get it done in a couple of years.
So is this what you're saying to Jason Kenney right now? Turn it over, we'll get it done.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't want to, and I think their words are one thing, but I think we go back to that phrase of actions speak louder than words, and the actions have clearly shown that and again, I'm not just going to point at this provincial government, but provincial governments for the last 20 years haven't delivered on what they should be doing. But in particular now, I think why it's very frustrating now is that we had to refuse about 420 units of permanent supportive housing fairly recently because the province wouldn't commit to funding the operations of those buildings once they're done. So the
Hmm.
federal government was ready to give us the funding. We were ready to go build it. We just needed them to say, we will operate it. And that would cost them $6 million a year. And I know that on paper for a lot of people, oh, it's a lot of money. The amount they would have saved in healthcare costs in just a few years would have far outweighed that. So yes, they I wrote about this on social media one day. I think, it's one thing to say that you are fiscally responsible and that you care about others. But if you don't fund the construction and operations of permanent supportive housing, nobody should be saying that. If you actually believe that you are a person that cares about good spending of money and you care about the well-being of others, there's only one way to show that, and it's providing everyone with a home.
I see what you're saying. I listened on an interview with John Iverson, and he was saying if he could do his time again, he would have done more to tackle homelessness. So I gather it's a very big, gigantic problem. So my question to you right now is, what are your two highest priorities for change? Should you get a mandate for another tenure, what are the two biggest things you would race to accomplish?
Hard to narrow it down to just two. I've been working on my platform, and and there's I think we're at about probably 15 pages worth. But if I could summarize it and try to break it down into maybe two themes, the first theme is related to our recently approved city plan. So the city plan is really this guiding document for how city council and our city staff are going to work on and how we're going to build our city of 2 million people and what that city looks like. And so I think one of my first priorities, or one of my top two priorities, is actually taking that plan and putting it into action. Again, actions speak louder than words. We've got some beautiful words and a wonderful plan, but if you're not willing to actually then put in the policy and put in the resources to allow that plan to come to life, it's meaningless. And it's hard to summarize the entire city plan in just a few short sentences. But if I could give it a try, I would say one of the things that stands out to me in the city plan is that desire to provide Edmontonians with choice in where they want to live, in how they want to move throughout the city, in how they want to live their life. And I think the city plan really does that. And the other part of that is that it really focuses on this notion of 15-minute, it's sort of called the 15-minute city or 15-minute community. And what I love about that is, again, this idea of this 15-minute community is that you would have access, that if you left your front door and you went on a 15-minute walk, bus, or bike ride, would you have access to most of the services that you would need? And unfortunately, very few parts of the city actually have that right now. There's only about 15% of Edmontonians that would already live within these areas that they have access to everything within that 15 minutes. And the city plan says everyone should have that choice. Again, we don't want to force people to have to live more locally, but you should have the choice to live more locally if you want to. And so seeing that city plan, putting it into action, making sure we're developing those choices and those viable options for moving around the city, for housing options, for recreation options. I think that's what the city plan's all about, and that's one of my top priorities. The other one really deals with responding to a challenging economic time. We're coming out of again, this pandemic, which has been seen substantial impacts to people's health and well-being. We've seen impacts to people's livelihoods and their jobs and their finances. And how we respond to that is quite critical. We are also dealing provincially with this really downturn in the economy that's been in place for years and years and years. And how we respond to that, how we work through that, and how we make sure that we don't neglect the work that we have to be doing still as a city. So we still need to rebuild our roads and expand transit and provide recreation opportunities and different programs and services and amenities. but it's going to look very different in how we do it now than how we might have done it 5 or 10 years ago. And so how we come up with creative and innovative ways to activate our spaces to let people come out of this challenging economic times is, I think, a really key priority. And sometimes it's as simple as the very small things like we saw last year and as we're seeing this year. We have businesses that say, hey, can we just expand our patio out onto the sidewalk and to the parking lane? And in the past, we used to put up all these barriers to businesses. Oh, sure, you can do it, but fill out this long application process and pay us $500. People don't have the money to do that. These businesses don't have, the small businesses in particular, don't have those type of resources. If they need us to be responsive in order so that they can thrive, we need to do that. And we just need to get out of their way and make it easy and keep everyone safe. But outside of that, let's figure out ways to allow our economy to evolve. And I think as a city, we have to look beyond our borders and remember that we are really working together, not just even as a region. And there was a recent agreement that was signed between all of our regional partners about that economic development, but more broadly as a province, how we're going to be working together to compete on a global scale. So if we want to thrive, we have to make sure we've set up that environment to thrive. And I think that's another major thing I'm interested in working on.
Now, I was just talking about positive energy. We've got AJ Amory saying, Miss Andrew Knack, you're the best counselor in the city of Edmonton. Really proud of you and always appreciate all your efforts. If you'd like to leave a message, please make sure you leave us a message and we'll read it or we share with our audience. We're running out of time. I'm just out of curiosity. The last answer took about 10 minutes. But it's okay. It's okay. Where are your favorite places to spend time? I'm just curious. Where do you, okay, so this is Danisha. She's loving on you again. Look, I'm feeling all the love as well. There's just something about you light. You radiate a lot of love. And thank you, Danisha, for that. So let's consider real quickly. I think we have maybe time for one more question. Where are your favorite places to spend time in the city?
Few quick answers. I know it might sound cliche, but I actually really love City Hall because it is truly everyone's City Hall. It is such a public space. It's so much more inviting than other city halls I've been to. The other spot is a spot that I live just across the street from, and it's the Jasper Place Library. And I love it because it is a hub for not just the community I live in, but for many other communities in the area. And the library is just, we're so fortunate to have the Edmonton Public Library because they have transformed how people access information. They've transformed how people can come together. And even more so than City Hall, the public libraries that we have in our city are the last truly public place that anyone and everyone is welcome. And I just love being able to live across the street from a building that embodies public access, public engagement, community, and I love getting to walk out my door every day and see that building because it just means so much, and it's such an inspiring place to see.
You're an amazing man, Mr. Andrew Knack. You're councillor for formerly Ward 1 and you're running for Ward Nakota Iska. You have the final word, and I want you to leave us. So when is the election? Where can we find out more about you? And what are the 3 things about your character you want people to remember as they go cast their vote in September?
Oh, goodness. Well, we'll start with just, again, my thanks to you for having me. This has been a wonderful conversation. I've really enjoyed this. And the election is going to be on October 18th. So we're just under 6 months away. Very excited about that. If people want to stay in touch with me, you can pretty much find me anywhere and everywhere on social media. If you search my name, you're pretty much going to find me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, although I don't dance on TikTok. I just enjoy it. It's a fun spot to be. And then you can access my website, andrewknack.ca or andrewknack.com. It's the same spot. You'll get to the same site. And then, you'll see me out and about. I've already been out door knocking, as mentioned, not just for the campaign, but that's part of what I regularly do. And I actually host also a virtual town hall every week as a way to stay connected with people. So if people want to join me on Facebook, typically Monday nights, that's a great opportunity to connect, or people can watch it after the fact. And then maybe to close on your points at the end, again, always tough to try to describe yourself. It's in a job interview, you've got to purposely get talk about all the great things you do, but it feels a little arrogant when you do it in a role like this, when you're serving others. I hope what people look at me and what I would want people to know about me is I believe I'm somebody that serves with integrity, somebody that is actively willing to listen to everyone. We won't always agree, but I want to hear from you. And then tying into that, I think the third point is just to be respectful and recognize that everyone's coming into an issue with different life experiences, with different perspectives. And you have to be willing to treat that person with respect, to understand what drives them, why they're passionate about the issue that they're talking to you about, and then see if there's ways to help. And it's tough because not every time you can, but I think it's important to know that people have that opportunity to be heard. And I hope people will see that from me and have seen that from me in the past.
Before you go, sir, can I just get a public confirmation that you'll come back onto the Yeg Show before October 18? We didn't finish.
Absolutely. Yes, of course. I'm ready. You just name the day, I'll be there.
Absolutely. I want to say thank you so much for your time, Mr. Andrew Knack. I feel like I know you. That's because I follow you everywhere, and there's this positivity that you radiate, which has been confirmed by the universe, and it's been confirmed by all those people living their love and their lives and everything. So thank you again for your time tonight. I hope we get the opportunity to chat again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. All right, guys. We'll see you next time on the Yeg Show. Bye for now.